Tonight's story is one of obsession, betrayal, and a chilling murder that will leave you questioning who you can really trust. This is the shocking tale of Emily, her husband David, and the stranger who tore their lives apart. Stay with us as we uncover how a secret online romance spiraled into a deadly tragedy. Emily lived in a small suburban town where everyone knew each other's names and smiles. To the outside world, she and her husband David were the image of perfection. David, a successful architect, often left for work in neatly pressed suits, while Emily, a freelance graphic designer, managed their home with warmth and charm. Their friends called them the couple that never argued, the pair who seemed destined for a long, happy life. Every morning began the same. David brewed coffee while Emily watered the small garden she adored. He'd kiss her forehead, she'd laugh at his old jokes, and together they looked like the kind of couple made for storybooks. But behind the laughter, Emily sometimes felt a strange emptiness she couldn't explain. David worked long hours. He often returned home exhausted, his briefcase heavy with unfinished projects. He loved Emily deeply, but his mind was always half at work. Emily noticed this. She never complained, yet in quiet moments she wondered if love was supposed to feel lonely. One evening, after finishing a freelance project, Emily sat by the fireplace scrolling through her phone. She joined an online group for designers. Among the comments praising her work, one username caught her eye. Mark 87. His messages were flattering, yet respectful. He complimented her designs, asked about her creative process, and slowly, over the days, his words began to fill a void she had long ignored. David noticed none of this. To him, Emily's quiet smiles meant everything was fine. But at night, as Emily typed away, Mark's words lingered in her heart longer than David's tired goodnight kisses. By the end of the week, Emily found herself waiting eagerly for Mark's messages. His tone was different, warm, attentive, curious. Unlike David's distracted nods, Mark seemed to hang on to every word she typed. She felt seen. She felt heard. Little did she know this innocent connection was the beginning of a nightmare, a web carefully spun by a man who was not who he claimed to be, a man who would one day take away everything she loved. The story of a perfect marriage was about to unravel. The days passed quietly, but for Emily, each one carried a secret excitement. She still performed her daily routines, watering the flowers, preparing dinner, and waiting for David to come home, but her mind drifted constantly to her phone. Every buzz, every notification made her heart skip. She told herself it was harmless, just a friendly chat with someone who understood her passion for design. But deep inside, she knew this connection felt different. Mark was charming. He always seemed to know the right thing to say. When she complained about the stress of deadlines, he encouraged her. When she joked about creative blocks, he laughed in a way that felt genuine. He shared stories of his own supposed work in marketing, of late nights and difficult bosses. Emily felt as though she was finally talking to someone who understood the frustrations of her world. David, meanwhile, was still lost in his career. He came home later than usual, eyes heavy, his attention swallowed by blueprints and deadlines. He didn't notice that Emily's phone was always by her side now. He didn't ask why she smiled faintly at random times or why she excused herself to check messages. He believed in her completely, trusting her in ways she didn't even recognize. One night, as David worked late, Emily curled up in bed with her phone in hand. Mark's messages lit up the screen. "I don't know how you do it, Emily. You're so talented and yet so humble. David is lucky to have you." Her cheeks flushed at the words. She quickly typed back, "Thank you, but I'm not always perfect." "Honestly, sometimes I feel invisible," Mark replied instantly. "Invisible? To me, you're the most visible person I know. You deserve to be appreciated for who you are." Those lines struck deep. Emily stared at them, her chest tightening. When had David last spoken to her like that? When had anyone? From that moment, the chats became more frequent. What began as short exchanges about design turned into long, late-night conversations about dreams, regrets, and secrets she had never shared with David. She didn't realize how quickly her emotional walls were crumbling, or how carefully Mark was breaking them down. The more they spoke, the more she noticed David's absence. Every time David missed dinner, every time he failed to notice her new dress, she found herself comparing him to Mark, and every time David fell short. It was subtle at first, a shift in her laughter, the way her eyes lit up when her phone buzzed, the way her silence grew heavier at the dinner table. David, though tired, began to sense something, but he didn't ask questions. He assumed it was stress or exhaustion. He had no idea that someone else's voice was already echoing louder than his in Emily's heart. As the weeks went on, Mark's tone grew slightly more intimate. He called her beautiful. He praised her for being strong. He made her feel like she was more than just a wife waiting for her husband. Slowly, Emily stopped feeling guilty. She told herself it's just friendship, nothing more. But friendships don't usually come with racing hearts and restless dreams. What Emily didn't know was that Mark's attention was not born from kindness. Behind every word was calculation. Behind every compliment was a plan that would soon shatter her world forever. Emily woke up one morning with a restless feeling in her chest. David had already left for work, leaving only a scribbled note on the kitchen counter. "Late meeting tonight. Don't wait up." She stared at the paper, sighed, and placed it aside. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual. Her phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Good morning, beautiful. Did you sleep well?" She smiled, almost against her will. No one had called her beautiful in so long. She typed back quickly. "Not really. House feels so quiet when David isn't around." Mark's reply came within seconds. "Quiet isn't always bad. Sometimes it gives us time to think about what we really want." Emily paused, the words circling in her mind. What did she really want? She loved David, or at least she thought she did. But lately, she couldn't remember the last time he had looked at her with that same warmth Mark's words carried. Over the next few days, Mark's tone grew even bolder. He told her she deserved more attention, more love, more laughter. His words painted a picture of a life where she wasn't waiting at a cold dinner table, where her smile wasn't ignored by a tired husband. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Emily sat by the fire chatting with him. Mark wrote, "I can't understand how David doesn't see what he has. If I had you, Emily, I'd never let a single day go by without making you feel like the most important person in the world." Her breath caught at those words. She typed, then deleted, then typed again. "You don't understand. David works hard for us. He loves me. He's just busy," Mark replied gently but firmly. "Busy is an excuse. Love makes time, Emily. Real love doesn't make you feel alone." His words slipped under her defenses like water seeping into cracks. She didn't realize it, but Mark was shifting her perspective, turning her small disappointments into glaring flaws in her marriage. That night, when David came home late and collapsed onto the couch without so much as asking about her day, Emily's chest filled with quiet anger. Mark's voice echoed in her head. "Real love doesn't make you feel invisible." The next day, she found herself dressing with more care, wearing lipstick she hadn't touched in months. Her heart racing not for David, but for the notifications that would soon arrive on her phone. Every compliment from Mark felt like sunlight. Every message from him filled the hollow spaces her marriage had left behind. But it wasn't just about charm anymore. Mark began asking personal questions about her relationship, about David's habits, about their routines. Emily answered without thinking, feeling it was safe, feeling it was intimacy. She didn't see how carefully he was gathering information, weaving her trust into his silent trap. At night, lying beside her sleeping husband, she held her phone close, whispering words into the dark, that she had never spoken to anyone but David before. Mark's replies made her feel alive, seen, adored. But love wrapped in secrecy is dangerous. And Emily was walking blindfolded toward a cliff. Mark wasn't just a stranger on the screen anymore. He was becoming a presence in her life. A presence stronger, louder, and more intoxicating than her husband's fading voice. And Emily, without realizing it, was falling. David was not a man easily distracted. His life revolved around deadlines, contracts, and the steady discipline of architecture. But even he could no longer ignore the subtle changes in his home. Emily's laughter was different now. She laughed softly at her phone, not at his old jokes. Her eyes lit up for glowing screens, not for him. She excused herself more often, stepping out of the room to take a quick call or to finish something on the computer. David told himself it was nothing, just work, just the internet, but the unease was gnawing. One evening, he returned home earlier than usual. The house was dim, lit only by the golden lamp in the living room. Emily sat curled on the couch, phone in hand. Her lips curved in a smile that vanished the moment she saw him. "You're home early," she said, quickly locking the screen. "Yeah," David replied, dropping his bag on the chair. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Who are you talking to?" "No one. Just a friend from my design group." Her tone was casual, but her hands trembled slightly. David forced a smile, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That night at dinner, silence stretched between them like an invisible wall. Emily picked at her food, distracted, while David studied her closely, searching for answers in the flicker of her eyes. In the following days, the distance grew. Emily stayed up later, claiming she was finishing projects. David noticed the way she carried her phone everywhere, even into the bathroom. She never used to do that. Once, while she was showering, the phone buzzed on the nightstand. David glanced at the screen. The notification flashed with a single word, Mark. His stomach tightened. He didn't touch it. He didn't want to become the kind of husband who snooped. But suspicion burned in his chest like acid. "Emily," he said one morning, "you've been different lately. Is something wrong?" Her eyes widened, then narrowed defensively. "Different?" "I'm fine, David, just busy." "Why are you making it a big deal?" "I'm not," he replied carefully. I miss us." "I miss you." Her face softened for a moment, guilt flickering in her gaze, but then she looked away. "You're imagining things. Everything's fine, but everything wasn't fine." At night, David reached for her hand only to find her clutching her phone instead. He tried to kiss her, but her lips were distracted, her mind elsewhere. The woman who had once laughed at every silly thing he said now smiled at messages from someone he couldn't see. The crack in their marriage had widened into a quiet canyon, and Emily, though she still loved David in her own way, was slipping further into Mark's grip. David lay awake most nights, staring at the ceiling, the sound of Emily's faint typing beside him. Doubt clawed at him. Was he losing her? Who was Mark? Why did she need him? The answers lurked just out of reach, hiding behind glowing screens and whispered words. But soon, those cracks would shatter everything beyond repair. Emily sat at her desk, the cursor blinking on her computer screen. The freelance project in front of her remained untouched. Her mind wasn't on the design, it was on the buzzing phone beside her. She picked it up almost instantly when it lit up. Mark 87. "Did he ignore you again last night?" Emily hesitated. She thought of David's tired face, the way he had fallen asleep on the couch without touching the meal she cooked. With a sigh, she typed back, "He's been so busy. He barely talks to me anymore." Mark's reply came within seconds, smooth and calculated. "That's not love, Emily. Love makes time. If you were mine, I'd never let you feel like second best." Her chest tightened. Those words struck deep, feeding the ache she had carried for weeks. David was her husband, yes, but lately he felt more like a stranger passing through the house. Meanwhile, Mark was always there, awake when she was, listening when she needed, saying the very things she longed to hear. Later that night, David tried to bridge the gap. He placed a hand on hers at the dinner table.
Emily, we haven't really talked in a while.
Is everything okay between us? She forced a smile, pulling her hand away gently.
I told you I'm fine.
Don't worry. But her eyes flicked toward her phone the moment it buzzed.
David noticed.
His heart sank. That same evening, Mark's words turned sharper, more deliberate. He doesn't see you, Emily. He takes you for granted. How long will you keep waiting for a man who makes you feel invisible? Emily frowned at the screen, torn between loyalty and longing. It's not that simple.
He works hard.
He provides for us, Mark answered swiftly. Providing isn't love. You deserve a man who makes you his world. Someone who puts you first. Don't you ever wonder what life would be like without him? Without the loneliness? Emily froze, staring at the last line. Without him. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She quickly locked her phone, pushing it aside. But the idea lingered like a poisonous whisper in her mind. Over the next few days, Mark became bolder. He began asking about David's schedule, when he was home, when he wasn't. Emily, lost in the haze of attention, didn't see the danger in sharing. She told him about the late nights, the meetings, the weekends David often spent at the office. Mark responded with sympathy, but behind the screen, every detail was being stored. Every fact, every crack, every weakness. Emily told herself it was harmless, that Mark was just being supportive, that he cared in a way David no longer seemed to. But, in truth, she was already being led, step by step, into a trap she could not escape. At night, she would stare at David's sleeping face. She remembered the man who once made her laugh until she cried, who once held her hand, as if she were the only person in the world. But now, that man seemed far away, drowned beneath deadlines and silence. Mark's voice, however, was always clear, always present, always whispering the same question in different forms. Why stay with someone who doesn't love you the way you deserve? Emily didn't have an answer anymore. The storm outside rattled the windows, but inside Emily's house was silent. David had fallen asleep on the couch again, briefcase open, papers spilling onto the floor. Emily sat nearby, staring at her phone, waiting for Mark's words. The message came. You don't deserve this, Emily. You're not his priority.
You're living like a ghost in your own home, she typed back quickly. He's tired.
He works hard. I don't blame him. Mark's reply was sharper this time. You always make excuses for him. But tell me, when was the last time he looked at you like you mattered? When was the last time you felt loved? Emily froze, her eyes shifting toward David's sleeping form. His head drooped, his tie loosened, his chest rising and falling heavily. He looked worn down, older somehow. She remembered when they used to stay up late talking about dreams, laughing until dawn. That felt like another lifetime. Her fingers trembled as she typed, I don't know anymore. Mark's response was swift. That's because he doesn't deserve you.
He never did.
If I had you, Emily, your life would be different, better, free. She frowned. Free. The word lingered in her mind like a dark seed. Free from what?
Free from David?
The following days, Mark's tone grew more intense. His compliments turned into promises. His promises into plans. Imagine
waking up and not feeling invisible. Imagine living without being chained to someone who doesn't care. You'd finally be free to live.
the life you deserve with someone who loves you. Emily resisted at first. She typed out, please, stop. He's still my husband.
I can't just leave him. But Mark didn't back down.
His words dripped with poison, cloaked in concern. Leaving isn't enough.
He'll never let you go. He'll always hold you back. Unless...
The message stopped there, unfinished, like bait dangling before her. Emily stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She didn't dare ask what he meant. but she knew. Deep down, she knew. Later that night, as David sat across from her at dinner, she could barely look at him. His weary eyes, his distracted words, the silence between them. It all felt heavier now, as though Mark's voice had taken root inside her head. When David asked, "Are you okay?" she simply nodded, hiding the storm brewing inside. That night, Mark messaged again.
I know it sounds extreme.
But Emily, sometimes the only way to have a new life is to remove what's holding you back. Her chest tightened, fear mixing with guilt. She replied, "Stop, don't say that." But even as she typed it, she didn't block him. She didn't end the conversation. Mark had planted the seed. And Emily, whether she admitted it or not, had let it stay. She lay awake beside David, watching him sleep. She wondered if he knew how far she had drifted. She wondered if he felt her slipping away. In the glow of her phone, Mark's last message remained. "You'll see. One day you'll thank me for setting you free." The storm outside howled louder, but the real storm had already begun inside her home. The night it happened, the air felt unusually heavy, as though the house itself could sense what was coming. Rain drizzled outside, tapping against the windows in a soft, steady rhythm. David came home later than usual, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, his suit damp from the storm. "Long day?" Emily asked quietly as he hung up his coat. "Yeah," he sighed, forcing a weary smile. "But I'm glad to be home." Emily nodded but said nothing more. Her mind wasn't with him anymore. It was on her phone, on the dark promises that had been whispered to her for weeks. That day, Mark's messages had been different, more direct, more chilling. "It ends tonight. Be ready." She had read it again and again, her heart racing, torn between fear and a strange, twisted relief. She told herself she wouldn't let it happen. She told herself it was just words. But she hadn't stopped him. She hadn't said no. And now, it was too late. David sat on the couch, flipping through channels, unaware of the shadow creeping closer to their home. Emily moved to the kitchen, her hands trembling as she filled a glass of water.
She could barely breathe.
Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, felt magnified. Then came the noise, a soft creak from the back door. Emily froze, gripping the glass so tightly it nearly shattered in her hand. "Emily?"
Did you hear that?
David called from the living room. Her lips parted, but no words came. The creak grew louder. A shadow slipped inside, blending with the darkness of the house. And then he appeared. Mark. Not as the charming, faceless voice from the phone, but as a tall, broad-shouldered man with cold eyes that glinted in the dim light. Emily's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream to stop him, but her voice caught in her throat. "Who are you?" David demanded, rising to his feet. His confusion lasted only seconds before fear flickered across his face. Mark's answer came in silence. He stepped forward, a gloved hand gripping a heavy metal pipe. The moment seemed to stretch endlessly, but the strike was swift and brutal. The crash echoed through the room as David staggered, blood blooming across his temple. He gasped, eyes wide, stumbling toward Emily as if to reach her, to understand. She stood frozen, the glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. "No," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks.
"Stop, please."
But Mark struck again.
And again.
Until David collapsed, motionless, the warmth of life fading from him as the storm outside wailed louder. Emily dropped to her knees beside her husband, sobbing, her hands trembling over his still body. She hadn't lifted a finger against him, but the guilt wrapped around her like chains. Her silence had been enough. Her choices had opened the door. Mark stood above them, breathing heavily, his expression twisted with triumph. He looked at Emily, his voice low and cold. "It's done. You're free now." But freedom had never felt so much like hell. The storm outside showed no sign of stopping. Thunder rattled the windows while Emily sat on the floor, cradling David's motionless body. Her sobs echoed through the house, but no sound could drown out the image seared into her mind. The moment Mark's weapon struck, the moment everything changed, blood pooled on the carpet, dark and spreading, the smell metallic and suffocating. Emily's hands shook violently as she tried to hold David's chest, as though she could force his heart to beat again. "David!
Please, wake up," she begged, her voice cracking.
But his eyes stared blankly, unseeing. Mark stood a few steps away, breathing heavily, his weapon slick with blood. His expression carried no remorse. He wiped his gloved hands on his coat as though brushing off dirt. "You need to stop crying," he said sharply. "This wasn't supposed to be messy."
"He's gone. You're free now." Emily's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with horror. "Free?"
she hissed, her voice trembling.
"You killed my husband."
Mark leaned closer, his shadow stretching across her and the lifeless body.
"Don't pretend you didn't want this. You could have stopped me."
"You knew what I planned."
"And you let it happen." Her stomach twisted.
He was right. She hadn't stopped him. The guilt weighed on her chest like a boulder, crushing the air from her lungs. Suddenly, the distant wail of sirens pierced the storm. Emily's eyes widened in panic. "Oh, God!" Their neighbors must have heard something.
"They're coming." Mark grabbed her wrist roughly, pulling her to her feet. "Listen to me. You're not going to fall apart now."
"If they ask, you act like you had no idea. You play the grieving widow. Understand?" She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. His cold, unflinching stare silenced her. For the first time, she realized just how dangerous he truly was. The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue lights flickering through the rain-streaked window.
Emily staggered backward, her hands covering her face. "This isn't what I wanted,"
she whispered. Mark stepped closer, his voice low and controlled. "It doesn't matter what you wanted. What matters is survival. You either stay quiet or you go down for this too." The words sent chills through her. He wasn't saving her. He was trapping her. Every choice she had made, the texts, the secrets, the silence, had woven a web that now bound her to him. Heavy knocks pounded on the front door. "Police, open up!" Emily froze, her entire body trembling. She looked at David's body one last time, her heart shattering. Then, with shaking legs, she stumbled toward the door. Mark stayed in the shadows, his expression unreadable, but his voice hissed in her ear before she touched the handle. "Remember, Emily, one wrong word."
"And you'll join him." Her hand gripped the doorknob, sweat mixing with rain dripping from the roof.
As she opened the door, two uniformed officers stood under the storm, flashlights in hand. Their eyes immediately scanned her pale face, her soaked clothes, her trembling body. "Ma'am," one of them said gently, "we got a disturbance call."
"Are you okay?"
Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She glanced over her shoulder, and in the dark corner of the living room, Mark's figure lingered, watching, waiting. Her next words would decide everything. The storm raged outside as the officers stepped into the house, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. Emily staggered back, her hands trembling, her face pale as chalk. She looked every part the grieving widow, but beneath her fear was something deeper: guilt.
Raw and suffocating. The taller officer, badge glinting in the dim light,
swept his flashlight across the living room. The beam froze when it landed on David's body. Blood had soaked into the carpet, stark and undeniable. "Oh my God!" the younger officer muttered. He immediately reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we've got a possible homicide."
"Send backup." Emily's chest heaved, tears streaming as she collapsed onto the couch.
She buried her face in her hands, her sobs genuine, but tangled with a terrible secret. The taller officer crouched beside her.
"Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Tell me, what happened here?"
Her mouth opened, but words refused to come. Her eyes flicked toward the corner of the room. Mark stood in the shadows, hidden from the officer's view, his gaze sharp and unyielding. He gave the slightest shake of his head, a silent command. Emily swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak.
I don't know. I heard something. I came into the room and he was already.
She broke into sobs, burying her face again. The officer nodded, his jaw tightening. All right, we'll need your full statement later, but for now, you need to stay put. Meanwhile, the younger officer inspected the scene. No signs of forced entry, he observed. Looks like the back door's been tampered with, though.
Could have been a break-in, Emily flinched.
She remembered the creak of the back door, the shadow that slipped inside, but she stayed silent. Did your husband have any enemies? The officer asked gently. Her heart raced. Yes, she thought bitterly. The man standing behind you. But all she managed to whisper was no.
No one? The officer gave her a sympathetic look.
We'll get to the bottom of this. As the investigation unfolded, Mark moved stealthily, always staying out of the police's line of sight. To Emily, it felt like he was everywhere, hovering, watching, controlling. Every time her lips parted with the truth, his cold stare froze her into silence. The younger officer returned. We'll need to seal the scene. Ma'am, do you have somewhere safe you can stay tonight? Emily's hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to scream, no, I don't want to be anywhere near him.
But Mark's presence pressed down on her like a cage. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking.
I'll manage. The taller officer placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll be back in the morning for a full statement. But you're not alone in this. We'll find who did this, Emily nodded weakly, but inside her soul screamed. The truth was right there, breathing in the same room as them, and yet she couldn't say it. As the officers began photographing the scene, Mark leaned closer, his whisper a knife against her ear. Good girl. Keep quiet. You and me, we're in this together now. Emily's heart shattered. She realized the nightmare wasn't ending with David's death. It was only just beginning. The storm had finally eased, leaving the night eerily quiet. The officers finished their photographs and notes before stepping outside to radio updates, leaving Emily in the living room with David's body covered under a white sheet. Emily sat motionless, staring at the sheet. Her husband, her partner, the man who had trusted her, was gone, reduced to silence under fabric. Her heart ached so fiercely it felt like it might tear in half. Behind her, Mark lingered, silent, his presence as heavy as the blood still staining the carpet. She didn't dare look at him. You did well. His voice finally broke the stillness. They suspect nothing. Tomorrow they'll chase some fake intruder and you'll be free to live the life you wanted. Emily's fists tightened in her lap. The life I wanted? The words burned. Was this freedom?
Was this love? No, it was a prison. She turned toward him, her tear-streaked face pale but firm. You think I wanted this?
She whispered.
You think I wanted him dead?
Mark's expression hardened. Don't play innocent. You wanted out.
I gave you away, her chest heaved.
For weeks she had let herself be pulled deeper, mistaking his obsession for care, his manipulation for love. But standing in the ruins of her home, with David's blood still warm on the floor, the truth was finally clear. You didn't save me, she said, her voice trembling with anger. You destroyed me, Mark's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening growl.
Careful, Emily, don't forget, I own you now.
Without me, you're finished.
If I go down, so do you. Her hands shook, but something inside her snapped.
For weeks, she had been silent, paralyzed, afraid, but tonight had taken everything. Her husband, her peace, her soul.
There was nothing left to lose. No, she whispered fiercely. Not anymore. The front door creaked as the officers stepped back inside.
Emily's chest pounded. Her chance had come. One officer approached. Ma'am, we're going to escort you somewhere safe for the night. Do you have a friend or family nearby? Emily's eyes flicked between the officer and Mark. Mark's cold stare drilled into her, his lips silently mouthing, "Say nothing." Her heart pounded like a war drum. Sweat pooled in her palms. For a brief moment, fear nearly won. But then she looked at the white sheet covering David, and something inside her broke free. Yes, she said suddenly, her voice cracking. Yes, I do have something to tell you, the officer's brows furrowed. Go on. Emily's entire body trembled as she pointed toward the shadows where Mark stood.
He's not supposed to be here. He did this. He killed my husband. Mark's eyes went wide, rage flooding his face. Emily, don't!
He hissed, stepping forward, but it was too late. The officers drew their guns instantly, flashlights blinding him. Sir!
Step into the light. Hands where we can see them.
Mark froze, his confidence cracking for the first time. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably, her voice spilling the truth at last. He came in.
He killed David. I didn't stop him, but I swear I didn't help him.
The officers cuffed Mark as he fought and shouted, his voice venomous.
You'll regret this, Emily.
Without me, you're nothing. But his words were drowned out by the click of handcuffs and the radio crackle of suspect in custody. Emily buried her face in her hands. The nightmare wasn't over. There would be trials, questions, and guilt that would never leave her. But for the first time in weeks, she could breathe. She wasn't free yet, but she had chosen truth over silence. And in that moment, she knew David would not be forgotten.